1.0, convene open session, procedural business. 1.1, call to order. The special board meeting of the Unified School District is called to order on March 2nd, 2021 at 6:01 p.m. 1.2, roll call. Trustees to identify themselves by first and last name to formally establish quorum. Dan Ridland, Area 1.
Cindy Gardner, trustee area 3.
Jordan Zarate, trustee area 5, Brennan Springs, Evergreen Lake, Green Valley Lake.
Bill Mellinger, trustee area 1, Valley Ridge, Hampton, Cedar Heights Water.
And joining us remotely,
Natalie Lindeman, trustee area 4.
all 5 of us are present. 1.3, Pledge of Allegiance, led by Suzanne Grove. If you wouldn't mind doing the honors, please. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2.0, adoption of agenda. 2.1, adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
So Cindy moved and Bill seconded. Any discussion? No, let's move on to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed unanimously. 3.0, public comment period for items listed on this agenda within the subject matter jurisdiction of the governing board. The public comment period is administered by state law and is appointed in the meeting set aside for members of the public to share their opinions with the board. Open meeting laws do not permit the board to engage in dialogue or answer questions. Due to the modified meeting procedures during the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, if a member of the public would like to address the governing board on items listed on this agenda within the subject matter of their jurisdiction, an email should have been submitted to the executive secretary to the superintendent by noon today. Written comments will be read aloud and subject to the board's usual time limits for public comments. So we did have a couple of public comments that were not sent to the this executive secretary, the superintendent, and we had a couple of emails that were sent after the deadline. So unfortunately, those will not be read as part of the comments this evening. And let me see here. As far as our board policy, I believe it's 3 minutes, 5 minutes per item with a limit of 20 minutes per topic. And I'm assuming all of these, because it's a single agenda item, are on the same topic. And we have 19 emails, which would on average then mean a little over a minute per email. I will read swiftly. I do not believe I will be able to read swiftly enough to be able to get it done in 20 minutes. So before I start, we wish to stay by that 20-minute time limit.
I'm comfortable with us reading them, but we can discuss it as a group.
I would agree. I mean, for 19 comments, I feel like we should be able to get through in under 5 minutes per comment, I would guess. It takes a little more than 20 minutes for the topic total, like appropriate.
Like I said last time, it's so significant, the issue, it's probably helpful for us to hear comments.
Okay. Well, all right, so let's go ahead and vote. All in favor of waiving the 20 minutes? Oh, I'm sorry. I have a motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion to extend the total topic time to be unlimited as long as it takes to read the submitted comments.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passed unanimously, and I'm going to start reading. I'm reading them in the order in which they were received. So, dear school board members, Reopen Rib Schools parent community would like to thank you for your diligent work, hard work of getting our children back to school in person as soon as possible. We urge you to open the schools for all grade levels within a reasonable time frame. and with as much in-person instruction as possible for those who desire this for their kids. Most of you expressed your desire and motivation to get our schools back to school as soon as possible. With the passing of the current legislation, the safety plan approved, school sites adequately prepared, and a parent community that desperately desires in-person instruction, we see no reason to delay any longer. Please do the right thing and vote to reopen Rim schools. Thank you sincerely, Jessica Willemse, reopen Rim schools president. We need our children to be back to in-person classroom instruction as soon as possible with as many hours as possible. I am one of many parents trying to balance multiple children's education and maintain their mental health. Our children do not see me as an educator, they see me as a mother who's meant to comfort and bring peace. My fifth grader has an IEP and depends on as much one-on-one instruction as possible. And with a 4-year-old, I cannot provide that on my own. My 7th grader is struggling to keep her grades up to a D minimum as she was an AP student until distance learning began. Please do everything in the best interest of our children's future. Then there is the simple fact that we don't open in time to receive the funds being made available to schools. We're passing up much needed funding. Our district cannot afford to pass on funding in any form. Sincerely, Amber Hallmark, concerned mother. Hello, I'm a parent and 5th grader at CHE, and I've lived in Renner Springs for a total of 16 years. I know there is a group that is pushing for the schools to open earlier than April 12th, but not everyone agrees with this. And from my understanding, it isn't a large majority. Teachers' lives need to be taken into an account, and having them fully vaccinated before opening schools should be the standard. We are a small community, and could you even began to image what would happen if a teacher passes away from COVID because we rushed to open before an already planned date of 4/12/21 and didn't wait for the teachers to be able to get their second dose of the vaccine because a group of parents decided they want the school open sooner with no regard to teachers' health and well-being. And if it was passed to them from a student, how that would mentally affect that kid and others in that class or school. We as a community need to be thinking about our teachers. They're the ones that spend every day with our kids, who we trust to teach our kids. We should be thinking of their health and their safety as much as our own children. If the school opens on March 15th, like the small group of parents is pushing for, the kids that go to school on Thursdays and Fridays will be attending 2 days of school until after spring break. 2 days. That is from the school calendar and the hybrid model that we were told about. Please also take into account when making a decision to decide to open schools before the planned date of 4/12/21. I know everyone is trying to do what is best for the kids, but please think of the teachers as well in this situation. Thanks, Corin Anderson. I'm going to read this. On a personal note to the school board, I really appreciate everyone that's listening to every side. I know it isn't an easy position to be in no matter what. Even if you don't agree with what I'm saying, I thank you for listening. It's really hard to watch our teachers getting trashed on the local Facebook groups, and I feel like someone needs to speak up for them. We have some amazing teachers in the school district, and I just want them all to be safe, to be able to do their jobs, not worrying about are they going to get this virus, will they survive to be hospitalized or bring it home to their families. Thank you again. Dear Michelle Todd and Rim of the World Unified School District board members, I've taught for Rim School District for 17 years, and this year is by far the most difficult year I've ever had. When we started this year in August of 2020, I had no idea how to teach students on something called Zoom. I didn't know what Google Classroom was or what share a screen meant, or what Cami and Boom cards were, but I do now and so much more. I've learned so much this year through technology that I feel like I'm a better teacher. I've spent hundreds of hours and dollars learning to make my class fun and engaging with my students through Zoom. I never wanted any of this, but it had to be done, so I adapted. All of the Rim teachers have adapted to this new kind of teaching and have done a wonderful job. We have done all of this while scared and nervous about a global pandemic. I am the sole caretaker of my sweet mom, who's 85 years old. We have been so careful this entire year to keep her away from this horrific virus. I've had several friends die from COVID-19 and wouldn't want anyone to get it. I was so grateful when the original dates to open and the hybrid model removed. I have been anxiously waiting to get my mom vaccinated and myself. I was able to get my mom her first dose of vaccine on February 16th and my first dose on February 24th. When I heard you announce the April 12th date to reopen, I was so very relieved that both my mom and I would have time to get our second shots. I am so very grateful for all of you and the hard work that you do. I know that you have had many parents upset about not being back to school yet. I want to be back in the classroom with my sweet class just as much as they do. but I want to be as safe as possible. Please let us keep the date of April 12th, 2021 to reopen or as close to it as possible. I currently know of 2 cases of COVID in my class right now. If I brought this horrible virus home to my mom, I could never forgive myself. I know you want as many of us to get vaccinated as possible. Most teachers have been scrambling to get the vaccination, which is not readily available. Thank you for your concern for our teachers, staff, and our students. We are so close to the day we can be with our students safely. Thank you for your time. Schools need to be reopened ASAP. April 12th is not an acceptable reopen date, and the excuse that you need time to prepare is not acceptable. You should have been ready in November and then January, so there is no excuse at this point. Also, these kids, no matter the grade level, have all suffered long enough and deserve to go back full-time 5 days a week, and not a hybrid model and not half day. The half-day plan in 2 days a week is not okay. It will cause hardships on families. Every other industry is being reopened and life is resuming. That should include schools. Enough is enough. Reopen all schools today and open full time with full average. Hello, members of the board. Please reopen our schools as soon as possible for as many days as possible. I am seeing my own outgoing children becoming shy and introverted. Kids no longer play or interact with each other. There's no connection between teachers and students on Zoom. Teachers are meant to inspire and build bonds with their students. The joys of childhood are gone. Please help bring normalcy back. The best part is they want to go back to school, learn and make new friends. Please don't disappoint our children. They are counting on you. Karen Portoplasty. To whom it may concern, I would like to start by saying thank you to all the board members, administrators, teachers, and school staff that are working hard to get our kids back into school. Although I understand there will be many challenges in opening schools, I'm urging you to get our kids back in school as soon as possible. While hybrid may be the only option we have for now, I'm also asking you to get the kids into the classroom as many days a week as you can. I know many teachers are also ready to go back. My daughter's kindergarten teacher has said that they've asked her to bring back K-2K now. Please let them. Although there are challenges with distance learning at all grade levels, the younger children really should not be relying on screen time for learning. With teachers willing to go back, why can't we? My son is in 2nd grade, and even though he is doing well academically, he has shown increased anxiety and sadness over the past few months. He needs to actually meet his teacher in person for the first time, have her interact with him face to face, not through Zoom or Class Dojo. Interact with peers, work alongside peers, just have fun times with the schoolmates. These kids have been through so much this past year, and we need to do right by them. With teacher vaccinations in progress and proof that schools around our nation and in many countries have opened safely, it is time to get our kids back for in-person schooling. They need social, mental, emotional, and yes, academic support so much. Thank you for taking the time to hear our concerns. Sincerely, Melissa Carlson. School board, you are good people who work hard to make what you believe to be the best choice with the information you have. Please get our kids back to school for their health. School is so much more than academic instruction. Our children need in-person instruction. If you do not make it possible for kids to go back to school, please communicate what grounds you have for holding back when you see so many others moving forward. Don't give families any more excuses to leave the district. Mary. School board members, my kindergarten son is energetic, imaginative, and independent. His behavior changes from happy and creative to overwhelmed and irritable when he finds out it's a day. He has few friends because he has never been to school to make them. He only hears others interrupting the teacher's audio feed as he tries to distraction. He struggles to not interrupt and stay focused and involved with the teacher. The mental health and social skills of my child are partially held in your hands, minds, and hearts. Older children walked out of school last year on a Friday in March. They go back more than a year later. You have that power. With great wisdom, with great power comes great responsibility. Voltaire. Charles de Brun. Thank you for taking the time to read my plea in regards to opening our schools. As a mother of 5 children, I ask that our schools open not April 12th, but now. Our children range in age from kinder age to high school. I am a recent graduate myself. My 2 older children are honorable students. They have never gotten F's in their entire school career until this year. They are simply not retaining information the same way they would from in-person class time. I've heard from many parents that their students are also having the same issue. For high school students, this can be extremely damaging to their overall GPA and acceptance in certain colleges and universities. All 5 children are emotional daily, either complaining about logging onto Zoom and how much they hate it, or how big of a workload they have, and sadly, how desperately they miss seeing their school friends and daily socialization. Lots of meltdowns, emotions, and feelings of overwhelm happening over here. As parents, we strive to teach our kids about resilience and how to work through these difficult times and life challenges with a positive attitude. There have been many conversations this past year about how to overcome obstacles. We also teach them to stand up for themselves. However, this is our time as parents to stand up and advocate for them, to be examples of what standing up looks like. This is me standing up. Distance learning is detrimental to our children, and it needs to end now. In-person school should resume ASAP so our children. They have dealt with this long enough. Not only should we open now, but we should allow these children as much in-person learning as possible for all schools, elementary, middle, and high school. From the bottom of my mama heart, I ask that you do everything in your power to keep the schools open. Enough is enough. Parents won't stop fighting for what they believe is best for their children. In fact, we will continue to grow in numbers and get louder and louder. I thank you for all of your efforts and time. Sincerely, Kari Cummins. Dear River World School Board, I'm a Maroon Elementary teacher. The last school year of COVID has taken its toll on all of us, students, teachers, families, and our community. We are seeing the light at the end of this tunnel. Our district has done a wonderful job in acquiring the needed and other necessary equipment and safety plans to get us ready for reopening. It was very unfortunate that we couldn't open sooner, but the post-holiday surge put all of us at risk. Now, we apply what we learned. Don't take this lightly. We know what we must do to safely reopen. Everyone in masks, social distancing, personal hygiene, air filtration and ventilation, and sanitizing practices at every school site and building, as well as COVID testing when needed. The California government has just passed the latest provisions to get our schools reopened. Yes, there are some stipulations, such as all schools must reopen K-2 by the end of this month, March, in order to receive monies from the state. This will be an arduous process. Our community must be made aware of the steps needed to comply with these mandates. First, all teachers and staff who want to be vaccinated must receive these shots immediately. Remember, there's a 1-month window between each Moderna shot and another week to gain full immunity. Because of this time frame, certain teachers go tenaciously sought out their first vaccine. I suggest opening the week March 29th for TK-2 to meet the state guidelines to receive the funding offer, and to get our little ones and their families prepared for coming back to school on a hybrid model and learn safety procedures for that 1 week before our spring break. This way, the teachers who are completely vaccinated can enter the classroom without fear, and our little ones will have the opportunity to meet their teachers and know where their classroom is and are familiar with the other areas of the school. Then bring back all TK-5 elementary school students on the hybrid model after spring break on April 12th. There are some teachers and staff who have already had COVID-19 and do not want the vaccine, which is their choice. It appears the district will need substitutes to cover those teachers who are still waiting for their vaccine appointments in order to be safe. I take this pandemic seriously, having lost a family member and other family friends to this brutal virus. Nearly half of my class and their families have had COVID, and there's another uptick this week. I could have been one of these statistics if I'd been in the classroom. Furthermore, it is in our MOU that teachers be given 10 working days to prepare to move to the hybrid model for elementary, which is daunting, but teachers are up for the challenge because we want to be back with our students. My concern is this: are you requiring teachers to return to school if they're not fully vaccinated and don't feel safe? There are still teachers and staff who are at risk themselves or have family members at risk and still waiting for their vaccines. This would take us into the same quagmire we had in November. Please be patient and mindful of what these people and their families are going through to jump through the hoops to get back to their students and sites. I am one of these people. I will not have my second vaccine until past mid-March with full immunity at the end of March. I understand the pressure you are under to reopen schools. Just please do it safely and with all of us in mind. We're working hard every day to serve our students through this pandemic. We're almost there. We can do it with the incredible efforts this entire district has made to prepare to open and stay open. With warm regards, a dedicated and proud young teacher. The impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic have been devastating for so many families. So many Rim families are impacted by lack of employment, childcare, housing, food, and health care security. This pandemic has also been incredibly hard on Rim's educators who are working tirelessly to create a sense of stability for students in time of such upheaval. As educators, we share your urgency to get students back into our classrooms. Schools are complex social environments built around collaboration, relationships, and interaction. The best of luck, public schools too cannot be replicated through a video call. However, this urgent need to create stability and connection for students does not erase the reality that COVID-19 is still spreading in our community, and people's lives are still at risk any time we gather. The fact that the case numbers within district lines have remained lower than those in much of the county and state is a testament to the efficacy of the policies that have been in place. It is short-sighted and dangerous to use the success of these policies as justification for pulling the legs out from under them just as the vaccines begin to be distributed. For us to be able to return safely, there are several components that we believe are vital in order for our members to return to in-person learning. To reduce the spread of COVID-19, our staff and students need free and frequent access to COVID-19 testing in each school site, as well as robust contact tracing. With 2 to 3 school staff assisting this, it is not enough for this effort. We do not have enough nurses at every site, custodial staff, and other auxiliary staff like counselors at secondary to make everyone feel safe. Check adjourn every few weeks, and there are always positions for bus drivers, custodial staff, and instructional assistants, some of the key critical roles needed in the opening, and we always have a shortage. RIM has improved on obtaining COVID testing for our staff and community, but if there's another spike, our local hospital will not be able to take the load. With new variants circulating in the community, including the California variant discovered less than a week ago, we cannot relax on making sure that every person who wants to be vaccinated is, so we have the best shot of staying safe. We are currently plateauing in cases, and it looks the same situation we had last year, prompting the CDC to warn against another spike in spring and summer. Kids can still transmit the virus even without having serious illness, and families and students who have had to deal with it are the least happy with students congregating in conditions where we know are not fully safe. I am optimistic that the vaccines are beginning to be administered to teachers and school staff by the state's own best case estimation. Teachers and other school staff may not be fully vaccinated until mid-April, May at the latest. School staff must have access to the vaccine and have time for it to be fully effective before reopening the schools for in-person or hybrid instruction. Because currently we are putting our families and staff on the edge when there is the possibility of having classes closed again. Some students cannot and should not be put in a situation where they have to quickly adapt back one way or another. Why is there such a rush to reopen when we are on the cusp of being fully vaccinated? We also need time to continue working with our district and communities on plans and logistics. Families I have interacted with have the notion that all school staff are vaccinated, and that is not the case. Families have been rescinding their wants for sending their child in when they heard their school staff is not fully vaccinated. Currently, classes that are back in the hybrid model still have issues with needed materials the district has no extras for. This includes flimsy desk shields, which do nothing for a curious student sitting in their chair, not enough PPE for staff and students coming in, disinfecting procedures that do not happen often enough, and the lack of contingency plans for our students who have special needs or behavioral considerations to make all families feel safe, even in a hybrid model. We do not even know how effective our reopening procedures are going with our special populations yet, and it is already looking like plans need a lot of tweaking for it to be safer. Before we re-engage students into in-person instruction, we need thoughtful plans for the learning environments their students are returning to. Some students who have already returned are not happy with the classroom environment that forces them to be apart from their friends and not engage in the same way they used to pre-pandemic. Parents have the notion that their students will enjoy their teachers and staff micromanaging every movement and action they make, but this is not going to be conducive to a learning environment the students enjoyed prior. Return plans need to be trauma-informed, culturally responsive, asset-based, and focused on well-being rather than test prep and remediation. Once our students return, the focus will be on preparing them for state tests rather than addressing their current academic and social emotional needs, to be honest. I know the people who are advocating for the most for reopening without being fully vaccinated are not individuals who are in the classroom daily. It's been the educators who've been on the front line of a lot of this work, and the district continues to push the mantra, You need to risk your life. You need to risk your health and those of your families for the education of the students. I want to see a board member run after a student who refuses to wear their mask and constantly wants to stay close to everyone. If that is the position of the district, teachers and staff will be motivated to leave the community they love and go for districts that care more about the health of their teachers, support staff, and their families. I am an advocate for reopening schools, but safely. Please consider delaying reopening so our teachers and staff can be vaccinated. There's not a need to rush this. Thank you, a concerned teacher. Brim School Board, we the majority of the 70+% of the parents of Brim School District and over 50% of staff have voted to open the Brim schools time and time again because our children have suffered enough and we are pissed. Do you have children in our schools now and see them suffering? You, the school district board members, have chosen to support the California Teachers Association, CTA, and not support the science over our disabled and suffering children. Again, the science. The President of the United States, CDC guidelines, and many medical reports that have shown time and time again that if we follow the CDC guidelines, there are no infection rates among those schools who follow the guidelines. Our Governor Newsom and many other Democratic leaders who support opening our schools. My little 5-year-old daughter has suffered so much because of this pandemic. Her first comments while virtual learning were, "I have no friends," and she feels so alone and left out. She could see the other children, but could not talk or be with them. This broke my heart and made me cry for my little girl. The next things that started to happen was she became more and more distracted, disinterested in learning in school. Now she is becoming bored with school and does not want to attend. This is your fault and those responsible for closing our schools. The science is against you and always has been. It appears you follow the science when it is convenient, not when it comes to support our children with disabilities and suffering from virtual learning. I am asking nicely that you open our schools, as you know. I have been known to stir the pot, as I have heard several times from people in our district. I am pissed this time, like the 70+% of voters who you have chosen to ignore and will either recall or vote you out of your current positions on the Rim School Board. So please vote wisely and follow the science to open our schools. Sincerely, James White, SPAC 711 Committee and CHE Site Committee member. I would like to thank our school district for following CDC and CDE requirements for the reopening of our schools. I really appreciate what a difficult job this has been for them to help people understand the details regarding COVID restrictions and guidelines. I deeply appreciate that our school district will make sure that we reopen sites only when it's safe to do so. Sincerely, Debbie. Good morning. I'd like to share my appreciation to the board for taking the time to consider the multiple factors with regard to how, when we open our schools. There are some who feel April 12th is not soon enough. However, I respectfully disagree. Our students have had multiple projected return dates, and their anxiety and disappointment has been noticed for those of us supporting their distance learning. With spring break and the anticipated travel and increased socialization, an April 12th return allows for our students to return more safely than a premature return, risking having to shut schools down again if a positive case were to occur. Given we are not yet able to eat at restaurants and doors within our county, it feels too early to place our students in a classroom setting, despite our desires to return them to an in-person setting once safe. After sacrificing a year, a few more weeks to ensure their safety is well worth it. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, a concerned parent of 2 Grand Unified students. Good morning. Appreciate Rim School Board. My name is Lorena Alatorre. I'm a mother to 5 kids. The oldest is 7 years old and his name is Jorge. I have twins that are now 6 years old and their names are Francesca and Lorenza. They are identified as a Mexican-American family. My children are English learners because we speak Spanish at home. When they began to go to school in 2019, they have started to speak English. Now they are very frightened because they don't speak enough English. They have lost self-confidence speaking English. I beg you to return to school as soon as possible. We understand that this crisis has left so many losses of beloved ones, but life goes on and we need to move forward. Also, as an ethnic group that face some disadvantages, we face the fact that kids don't gain confidence speaking English. Please consider that all of us have been impacted by COVID-19 areas and we need to restart. Opening up the schools would be the best restart of our lives. Thank you for your time, Lorena Alatorre. To the school board, members of the Room of the World Unified School District. First, I would like to say that I appreciate the consideration and allowance of the reading of letters from parents, teachers, staff, and other members in this community. I would like to introduce myself wearing my first hat as a parent of 2 students in your district. My son is a junior in high school, and my daughter is a 6th grader at MPH. Academically, my children have always done the best that they are capable of achieving. A little push from me, of course. This year is quite different. Let me start with a positive. We all know the transition from elementary school to junior high can be tedious and testing to all involved. However, my daughter has excelled in her academics this year. Her teachers have given her the opportunities to push herself beyond her capabilities, and she has made the principals honorable. I attribute this to her dedication to please her teachers and receive feedback that we readily give her. Could she continue to make strides learning the way she is now? Of course. Do I think this is how she wants to learn? No. Daily, she asks me what the numbers are and if she will be allowed to meet her teachers, see her friends at school, and experience this rite of passage in her life. I wish I could give her the answers to that. You hold the answers to that. My son, on the other hand, is a different story. He has always done whatever it takes to just get it done and move on. If I'm being honest, his interests are outside on the field playing the game he loves. The only thing that has kept him together with academics throughout his years is Rim District and his connections to his teachers, friends, coaches, and counselors. This year, he doesn't have all of these connections. He attends his Zoom meetings, semi-listens, logs off, and goes back to his life of video games, sports, or his phone. His connections that keep him going are missing. There's no check-in beyond the 15-minute Zoom he's required to attend. His motivation to do well is gone. He's the kind of kid that needs the push that educators face-to-face can give him. As a junior, this is an important year for him to showcase and prepare for his future. His baseball coach has done a phenomenal job of keeping him on his grades, finishing his work, and attending every meeting with teachers and counselors. Without his guidance, I'm sure that my son would not be doing his work and keeping up. This is how I know his personal connections are what keep him motivated in doing his work. Can he continue to learn this way? No, he needs people. He needs his teachers to keep him motivated. He needs his team. Daily, he also asks me when he can go back to school. I don't have his answer. You do. The second hat that I wear is that of a teacher. Daily, I have Zooms from 8:20 with my students. These little people have endured so much in the last year of distance learning. They are trying so hard to do this immeasurable task that was forced upon them. We have essentially forced 5-year-olds to navigate a complex machine to help show us how they are learning instead of watching them learn with their peers in the classroom. Teaching a child to read is not an easy task. Added to it, the inefficiency of the internet broadband on this mountain has my students sounding out words with me lagging in the health department because our speeds are so vastly different. Daily, they ask me when they are coming back in the classroom because it is just so hard to learn this way. There are some students that are rocking it, but I am sure that if they were to choose, they would come to school too. They crave the reinforcement of their peers and their teachers. They crave being in the vicinity of their friends to show them their work. They crave the normalcy of going to bed at a certain time, to get up in the morning and brush their teeth, eat breakfast, and put their backpacks on and go to school. But every time we extend their date to return, we are putting out their little sparks of hope. Personally and professionally, I'm ready for my students. I want to see them learn in front of me. I want to see that aha moment and the light bulbs light up and they can read or do a complex math problem. So what about those students in Room of the World who don't have parents at home keeping up their learning? Those students who are helping their little brothers and sisters to make sure they get on their Zoom meetings? Those students who aren't getting positive feedback from their teachers? Those elementary students who aren't coming to the daily reading groups because it's too hard for them to focus behind the screen again today? Or those who are learning the English language and require their teachers' help with stamping up those phonics skills? How about those students who don't have a sport to keep them motivated to do well? Or what about those students whose parents have had a rough morning and their last thought is to get their kids on the Zoom? What happens to those students? We are failing them. We are failing these children by keeping them behind the screen all day. I've seen my own children as well as my students lose the motivation to comply with turning in their assignments daily. Are we assessing their learning or are we assessing their compliance with turning in a Google document that someone else may have complied for them? Please don't continue to keep them hostage behind their screens. We want to meet our students. We want our children to meet their teachers. Please consider the reopening of secondary grades as soon as possible so that we don't lose any more students to the dark days of remote learning. They need their peers, whether we want to admit it or not. They learn from each other in more ways than we know. They need their teachers and their teachers need them. As far as elementary reopening is concerned, please don't extend this date again. Furthermore, I urge you to consider allowing them to return to campus as soon as possible. Thank you for your time, Tracy parents. Rim Board, I am a parent of a first and second grader at LAE, and I want to share my support of reopening the elementary schools as soon as possible for as many days as possible. I would also like to know if we have Rim Board's commitment to a 5-day per week return in August 2021. I believe it is time to address the timeline for returning to full 5-day-a-week instruction. As most of you may know, the housing market in the mountain area is booming, and this information is both necessary and helpful for the decision-making process that many families are facing as they decide whether to sell their home and move to a state school district, putting students' education first. If 5 days per week in-person instruction will not be prioritized this school year, we deserve a realistic timeline of when this will take place. Thank you, Bridget James. Okay. 3.3 RTA and CSEA representatives. RTA. Okay. So, Mr. Bear, thank you.
Not as organized as I would like to be. So please be patient. It's okay. And it sounds like your constituents are as diverse as mine by listening to your letters that you have. And honestly, I really think everyone here has the interests of all the stakeholders.
Oh,
It's off now.
Thank you.
Oh, it was, oh, I thought the meeting was off.
Oh, I
Sorry.
got it,
I
good.
couldn't hear.
I really think everyone here has all the stakeholders' views at heart. I don't think anyone here wants to keep schools closed longer. However, a lot of this is out of our control. And one thing I really didn't hear in the letters was that we have to deal, including me as the association president of the Teachers Association. And I don't always agree with California Teachers Association, as we know from LCFF and other discussions. But overall I do. But no one said anything about the county, the state, the federal government, and how difficult they've made it to reopen. I mean, they change the rules on a daily basis for us. So parents out there, and I'm one of them, I have twins at NPH in 6th grade. You need to start calling your county, state, and federal representatives to let them know that this needs to be fixed now. We can't wait any longer. So with that, I do feel as though, even though the verdict came down that teachers don't need to be fully vaccinated to go back, I feel as though they should be. Ventilation is still a problem in our district. Our schools are older. We have windows that don't open, that are screwed shut. And I know you guys know this. So the ventilation is a problem throughout the district. Most schools that I see are newer than our schools. They have heating and air conditioning systems that have filters that are much more updated that we don't have. So I know each of the classrooms got one of those filters, but I'm not sure if that's enough. And, you know, we do have competition, and I appreciate that. But I just want to note that the school that has been open this time, Lake Arrowhead Christian School, has been closed 3 or 4 times also due to COVID outbreaks. So is it better to stay closed, or is it better to reopen and then close every 3 or 4 weeks when you have an outbreak? I don't know. I think parents also need to understand when they decide not to use our services. We have 13 teachers this year that are possibly going to be laid off. That's 13 salaries that may be leaving from our community. 13 people that won't be spending money in businesses up in the mountains. So please, even if you just support us for part of the time, send your kids to public schools. We have great public schools up here. Last year, I really felt like I'd been in a washing machine with everything that we're dealing with. Non-reelects, teacher layoffs, the daily changes from county, state, and federal government agencies. I have 3 more months as Ring Teachers Association president. It's been an experience. It's been nonstop experiences, from the impasse 4 years ago to dealing with this COVID. It will be somebody else's turn after 3 months. I do think, and forgive me if this is not, it doesn't sound like it's an order or consistent. So consistency, I think, is important. I don't think that one school should be doing something completely different than another school. I don't think that's fair for all of our students. And while all of our schools do have unique personalities, to have one go back and not another go back in the same way, I don't think is fair. So I would ask for that. If it were up to me, being a father of twins, I would want to go back to school as soon as possible. But that's the dilemma. When is as soon as possible safe? When is it the best? And now we have some things that I haven't read over from the state. And, you know, I worry a little bit about Governor Newsom, because his first plan wasn't very good. And I'm looking through the second plan, and this is going to benefit us. I asked Mrs. Haberman, she hasn't been able to, you know, it takes time to go through this and figure out how much money we're going to get and whether things can be paid for or not. So I was hoping to speak after you made these decisions, but I know that can't happen. So you have a tough decision to make. And it's the board that has to make it. And although selfishly having 2 kids, and it's been tough and all, if we haven't been there pushing those 2, they'd be sitting there getting up at noon, playing video games, and being frankly lazy. So I feel for those students that don't have parents at home or people at home to push them, because there aren't many students out there that are 100% self-motivated. I get that. So I was able to get a vaccine, my first vaccine today at Mountains, so hopefully that will come through. That's the next one in 3 weeks. And we can get that for all of our employees in the next 3 weeks, or whatever it is. I also wonder if parents really understand what a hybrid program is. We say they do, but students coming to school 2 days a week and then having the other 3 days that they're not there. Is that the best way to open? Yeah, it's maybe working down in the Lucerne Valley. But to me, that's not normal. It's not very much time with other students, and I think they need time with other students and time with their teacher as much as possible. So, I don't know. Again, if that's the best thing, or doing a morning session and an afternoon session type thing. But again, parents, we can only have 15 students in the classroom at a time. That's what the state says. So we're limited. I was going to read a letter, but a lot of it is redundant from the letters that you have in there. So again, it says, your job is difficult. You're responsible to the community who elected you and the students and teachers and staff you employ. I don't envy you your task to reopen schools safely, but it needs to be done at some point. So thank you very much for your time, and whatever I can do to help, Colin, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fair. Mrs. Scrub?
Good evening, members of the board and the district cabinet members. I appreciate this invitation to meet in person. I have enjoyed the past meetings virtually from my living room, from the car, and last week while waiting in line for nearly 3 hours for my first COVID vaccination. As a representative of the classified employees, I want you to know that we express appreciation for all the work that has gone in over the past year for the creation of the safest possible working conditions for employees and for keeping us employed as the essential workers that we are. Everyone has to consider the feelings and opinions of others as we have been on the roller coaster ride of the COVID pandemic and with its plethora of guidelines and moving targets. Classified employees have feelings and opinions that are as wide in range in spectrum as the feelings and opinions of our communities. Some are afraid of coming in contact with someone who's ill or bringing it home to elderly parents or relatives. And on the other end, some are ready and much less fearful and want children back on campuses. Some have come through this year healthy and others have contracted the virus. Every time I talk to our labor rep, she tells me of another case of COVID just recently, and I can't remember which chapter it was, but the chapter president contracted COVID and passed away. And so it really hits home when it's that close. But I want you to know that through it all, the actions of the classified employees have shown that we are essential and we are willing to do our part. Many, in fact, are doing things that they didn't sign up for, just like teachers, you know, they didn't sign up to teach virtually. And, you know, we know the bad guy is the COVID. We can't blame the school board for not opening schools. We can't blame the teachers for being afraid. We can't blame the governor. He's come up with a lot of plans. But it's COVID that's the bad guy. I want to remind you of what our members are doing. We have aides that have stepped up and learned Zoom without, much training. They create online teaching strategies and support the students and teachers. Others are supervising employee students so that their parents can continue in their essential work. Our new duties at some sites have shifted their schedules, if they're not working their normal schedules, and they are assisting in the child nutrition department, preparing and distributing food bags, while others are making and assembling instructional materials for students. I hope you've heard about our PE aide, Julie Perkins, who has come up with several creative ideas and projects, including videos and the PE backpacks to supply children and keeping them engaged in PE activities. She has also shifted her normal work job description and assist in other areas as needed, such as the district office. We have bus drivers that drive kids to school, and they're doing whatever they can to help maintain the schools and do some beautifying and painting. The news of improvements in the COVID numbers is thrilling to us, and we dream of getting back to normal. But the reality is that the pandemic is not under control. And things that we worry about are the things that Mark brought up, the schedule of what is it called? The schedule of the cohorts. I worry that it might be more disruptive to their new normal. We worry that no matter how safe we try to make our schools, the risk of students and staff bringing exposure into the school will increase. We worry about that. We worry that the staff hasn't had the opportunity to get the vaccine. I had to, hear word of mouth, try this place. And I'm encouraged that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is been approved and that's getting on board. So anyway, every time our association president sends out a message to members, he pleads with us to please be careful, to stay safe, to practice the safety protocols. And he reminds us that we're not out of the woods. But we know you will consider and continue to consider the wishes and the feelings and opinions of everyone, and that we've got your back. We'll be there for you. And that's all. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. 4.0, reports and presentations. 4.1, setting direction, components of Assembly Bill AB 86, Superintendent Michelle Murphy and Cabinet.
So we have prepared a report tonight to give you the components of the proposed plan the legislators and Governor Newsom have proposed yesterday. They are voting this week, and the final vote should be on Thursday, with the governor signing on Friday if it goes to what they've announced. So each cabinet member is going to take 2 slides of a presentation and give you some information about AB 86. So Jenny's going to give the first 2 slides, which talks about funding. And I'll let her speak. I'll give the second 2 slides, and then Todd will finish, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Hello, thank you very much. Okay, so like we've seen in other components of the state, they've broken up COVID-related funding into different pots. So, and then with very similar spending guidance on what we can use the funds for. At first glance, without all the details in the bill, because we're getting what our partners at the state legislature and our consultants, as they dissect, and they're in some of the planning meetings, we're getting that. So we do not have the entire bill in its entirety to read the, you know, kind of the nitty-gritty piece components of it. And until the governor signs it, you know, there could be some changes as they vote on the floor on Thursday, and the governor finally hopefully signs it on Friday.
But we have been warned by our AXA that will happen. There will be changes to the language prior to Thursday.
So the first, I'm going to really cover the first two slides. And the first pot of money is really a school reopening fund portion. And that's $2 billion set aside statewide. It's allocated on the proportion to the district's total LCFF entitlement. And we're supposed to receive those funding amounts within 15 days of the effective date of the bill. So Friday on signature, they put, let's say Monday, or today, Tuesday, when it went through the committee as the effective date, then we should know 15 days what the exact dollar amount. Like Mark said, we were going kind of back and forth through some emails today. Well, what is the district's proportional share to the state's entire LCFS? So, I mean, that's not an easy feat to calculate, and not knowing if there's going to be any calculations that might be different, you know, once they conduct their formula. But just on a quick, kind of while I was in another Zoom today, a quick turn my camera off and do some digging on the CDE's website. You know, it does look like that we're 0.000477 of our proportional share. I cannot guarantee right now that that's going to be our number and have it. So we really want to wait until we hear the details on Thursday and Friday to start really planning the exact dollar amount that we would be entitled to. But that, you know, I was asked quite often today, you know, well, what is it? Well, what is it? Well, what is it? And that's really the best, you know, in some quick research that I could find. So the districts, when we do get our allocation, will receive half of the funding in May and the other half in August. What's good about this is that it will take the P2 certification in December into account. And for those districts who work really hard like we did to get the UPP higher, it will incorporate our higher percent in December for our UPP than it was in September. Okay, in order to get the funds, we must provide in-person instruction by April 1st, 2021. And the funding is reduced 1% per day through for every day you're not open by April 1st through May 15th. Now that does, they do exclude planned non-instructional days such as spring break. So districts who may have had PD days or a planned spring break, because I know that first week of April is, you know, Easter week is in there, and spring break for many districts, they have excluded those days from the penalty calculation. We know that for a fact.
Jenny, I looked at the information that was released that we have until August 2022 to use the money.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. So
And Jenny, what was that number again? The 000?
0.000477, but I have to please ask you not to hold us to that number.
of what?
Oh,
Of
what? It's in-
like,
Yes,
so like $30 million?
so
No,
that would be about 3 million.
3 million, okay. So it's a lot of money. Okay.
So, and that's if our kind of, what I would call dirty math.
Yeah.
Quick math is correct, okay? Literally keeping one eye on a new assembly bill that we were having to learn about today, and another eye trying to dig up some information. So, the second part of money, so that's the second slide, is $4.6 billion available, and this is to expanded learning time and academic interventions. So this is very similar to our current pots of money for the learning loss mitigation funds. We could socio-emotional support, increasing the number of days, summer school, that kind of a close the gaps type of expenditures. We can address student barriers to learning and students who are at risk of not graduating. There tends to be a little bit more flexibility in this pot of money than the prior CARES Act learning loss mitigation funds, and to possibly offset some general fund expenditures. And there's a component of it to either retain or rehire those positions in the paraprofessional area that may have been laid off. So there is some intriguing news on offsetting current unrestricted general fund expenditures by some of these uses. But like I said, there's a lot of details. You know, we're getting information in one or two sentences, and there's going to be a lot of details when the bill is finally signed. Again, this is also allocated on our proportional share of total LCFF compared to all the districts in the state.
Jenny, back on the first one, didn't it go down based on when you open?
Yeah, so it would be you would really be penalized 1% per planned instructional day for every day you don't open by April 1st.
And again, just to clarify, spring break would not be included in that penalty calculation.
Correct.
So
So if we plan to open April 12th as initially, it would be 2%. 2%,
that would be the first and second of April.
correct, because then we have spring break and then we would return April 12th for the original date I proposed, so it's 2%.
And Jenny, can you confirm, this funding, incentive funding set aside, is this Prop 98 funding?
Yes, it is.
So this is money that is already set aside for schools.
To my understanding, yes, it is.
So it's not really an incentive, it's money that should have been attributed to schools in any case.
It's a shelving. It's stealing from Peter to pay Paul.
And it's money that we wouldn't get otherwise.
It would probably be allocated for special projects or other one-time funds that the governor had in his January proposal. So some of the one-time and special categorical types that were in the January proposal, I would expect that those areas to be tweaked when we get to the May revise.
And so I don't have to do math because I'm not good at it. What's our estimate, which is an estimate of the 2%?
Around $63,000.
Thank you.
All right, so it's my turn to do the next two slides. They are defining in-person instruction as instruction under the immediate physical supervision and control of a certificated employee of the local educational agency while engaged in educational activities required of the pupil. We must provide continuous in-person instruction through the end of the year. Districts will forfeit funds if in-person instruction ends prior to the end of the school year unless told to do so by a local or state agency. Vaccines are not a prerequisite to provide in-person instruction under the new governor's plan. However, he has given a priority to educational employees. I was asked about the number of people still needing a vaccination in the district, which I gave you earlier today is 127. And we had no estimate of when those vaccinations would become available to them. However, at 4:50 today, I received an email from San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools that released all 127 vaccinations for RIM under a new guideline. So I will spend tomorrow morning sending each of these people an individual email with a new code to access the My Turn app for the vaccination. So all 127 employees that are still waiting for the vaccination will get that code in the morning prior to 11 o'clock. It's gonna take me that long to get the emails done because I have to send them one at a time. So, we no longer will be at Mountains Community Hospital. Is my understanding that they will use that code to log into the app. And then they will find the closest provider who is registered with the state of California for the My Turn app to go to. Governor Newsom changed all of this week. So everything that I've done for months has changed again. So, but the good news is that they will, all the employees will be given their code tomorrow to sign up and get their vaccination. The bad news is I don't know where that will be. And I can't guarantee that will be on the mountain, which I really hard to do.
Do we know what the wait time is to get an appointment at this point?
We have no idea. I was given the codes today and I was able to get 2 done before I came to the board meeting. So, and Mr. Malone's helping me very graciously. So we're trying to get those done. So that's a different news than I gave you earlier today on the vaccination, which I think is really great news for our employees.
That's good news, yes.
So, but again, that just shows what like Mr. Bear was talking about is the change. So I guess that, you know, the governor no longer felt that the state department or the county departments of public health are doing a great job. So those vaccinations are now going directly to the county superintendents. So that's where we're getting direction from.
Just to confirm, that 127 employees that are waiting for a vaccine excludes anyone who's already gotten the vaccine and anyone who's indicated that they're not interested in getting the vaccine.
That's correct. So that means that everyone will have had the opportunity, but I don't know when. I don't know if they get on the app, if that means, that's why I would have liked to have gotten it done, but obviously I have other commitments this evening. So, but I'm hoping that people will start to let me know how fast they get in. So, also the 4 to 6 foot distance is still a requirement. So when people talk about why hybrid and bring everybody back at once, under these guidelines, it is not possible. Because we have to adhere to the distancing. Existing testing agreements, this is on testing, will be grandfathered in for districts that are open by March 31st, 2021. Also your COVID safety plans that have been submitted, and they will also be grandfathered in if they're approved by April 1st. I submitted ours on February 19th. Tomorrow or Thursday should hit the 8 business days, and if I will not get an acknowledgement that it was accepted. I will just know if I don't hear that it was approved. So if they don't like it, I should know on the 8th business day. All right, districts open after March 31st, 2021 in the purple tier for TK2 must meet the COVID testing cadence per the California Department of Public Health, which means we must offer weekly testing for all students and all staff if we are not open by April 1st. COVID testing cadence requirements are limited to schools in the purple tier, and there will be no testing required for districts or counties in the red, orange, and yellow tiers. Next, Mr. Beal's gonna finish off the last 2 slides.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. And there's a lot of information being put out there. Good evening. Getting a lot of information put out there from a lot of different sources. So I'm going to wrap this up and talk about cases. And you're going to hear the word prioritize student cohorts quite often in this first slide. So I will touch on that as well. The color tiers have been in the news and out there. Dashboards, all the goodies for some time now. But we're starting into that role where we're starting to shift colors, which is nice. So just as a reminder, if we're at or above 25 cases per 100,000, we'll consider deep purple. Again, I think one of the greatest names for a band. What it says there is that we must offer in-person instruction to prioritize cohorts, and I'll touch on that in the next slide here. The one below that is if we're below 25 cases per 100,000, we're going to stay regular purple. And we must offer in-person instruction to prioritize cohorts in grades kinder through 2nd. This is in blue because this is where we're at right now at this point. We are quickly moving past that, and I'll touch on that in a second too. The next levels that we have for our colors are red, orange, and yellows. Here we must offer in-person instruction to, of course, prioritize cohorts. Grades kinder through sixth, however, for us, it would be grades kinder through fifth, they hit your elementary grade levels. In addition to that, we can, as a district, choose another grade level to open above the elementary levels. So we can do our elementary schools and open 12th grade, however you choose it, or it can be open all schools. It just gives us an option.
Is it a can or is it a must? In terms of opening an additional grade? It's a must.
It's a must open one edition.
One addition, it's our choice. So
Which one?
Okay.
Can't hear you on your mic.
So the question came around is, is it a must to open up the additional one? The answer is yes. But again, we have the flexibility in one. Grade level that is, like say, one or all. So here's the option. Just to go back a little bit on this, though, is we learned today that right now our new case ratios are at 9 to 100,000. So we're dropping dramatically in the number of new cases. I bring this up as a point of emphasis just because once we hit 7 to 100,000, we're going to run. So in all reality, if we look at this, we could be in the red status in a couple of days, a week. We're really not that far behind. This also ties in with sports. I know a lot of what we're talking is academics, but in what we heard in our current comments, and even our future comments, is the social emotional aspect of our students. What we had originally, what they told us originally, is that we were below 14 new cases that we could open up for outdoor close contact sports like football and soccer. However, once we hit that 7 number, that 7 per case, we could open up more that actually having required testing on a daily basis. So sport will start opening up, we'll start seeing more students participate. And I know in high school right now, we're having that conversation of what that's going to look like the schedule. So excited if we see get back our students again in the fields.
Good question. Oh, go ahead. Just a quick question on moving or changing tiers in a county. Is it still the case that you must maintain that data for a 2-week period before it takes effect?
it's 5
days.
Sorry.
5 days. Thank you.
Sorry, Todd.
No, that's okay.
You can tell I was on way too many webinars yesterday.
And are you thinking?
I'm done.
And Todd, what's the CIF? Sports.
So right now, CF has a tier system, very similar to what we have, based on if they're outdoor, non-contact sports, contact sports, sports, things like that. Right now, CF, we're in the tier where we can do things like cross country, we can do track, tennis, things that you don't have a lot of contact with, golf. But we're gonna start moving those areas very soon, we can have overall sports involved. This originally came back, I don't know why I shared this, but came back from the National High School Sports Association. And then CIF basically took that and said, we'll just do the same thing. And so we're starting to see again that open up as the case is lower. In all reality, as we start getting into the long videos, especially, more likely to get every sports.
So CIO is not holding back, it's lining up with the other numbers that we're talking.
Correct. And so these numbers, these are opening up the high school sports. Originally came down from the Department of Public Health, or California Department of Public Health. They actually were less stringent than CIF. So CIF now is just taking that new stance, where our Department of Public Health is saying you can't do. Okay, our last part here is this, prioritized students. I mean, I mentioned this a couple of times in the previous slide. I just want to go over what they are, just as the board of public or what they're talking about when we consider the words. The first things on there is our foster and homeless youth. I guess some of our most at-risk students that we're going to see in here. Our English language learners. I think one of the parents, if we are parents teachers, we're talking about that, and that's some of the struggles we're seeing for our students. Our special education students, of course, coming back, and I'm pleased to say that we do have some of our classes returning. It's actually pretty exciting. I live in Running Springs, and so the last few days I've been driving to work. I see one of our little yellow buses out there picking our students up, so it's nice seeing them come back to school. The other ones are going to be a little difficult to actually determine. The other one is students at risk of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. again, I think as a district as a whole, how do we identify that specifically? The only thing we may be able to look at is maybe our accounting side. If they're recognizing students that are going some type of emotional form, possibly. The other areas that are on here are disengaged students. I'll just leave that at that because
Yeah,
it's pretty
that
open.
one is super broad.
Yes. And then the last one is students lacking access to adequate internet access or service. And one of the slides prior talked about a community hub. And this is one thing that was brought up is that we can have space in our school sites or locations, or schools, locations where students who don't have adequate access to internet service can actually come into those buildings and utilize the services there on a basis.
And Todd, that's now or that's if we still go ahead?
Or that's now, not in that current stage. I think that's it for me. Last slide is questions.
I do have a question in terms of maybe 86 and in terms of the colors and the requirements of the district. So right now we're in purple, we might be moving hopefully soon because the county to red or orange better. In terms of the K through 2 or TK through 2 versus TK through 6 and additional, the 5 or 6 with an additional grade level, is that going to be fluid depending on when the county moves that to color? Do we know that yet in terms of how our funding and how those requirements will be of us depending on county numbers, or is it as of a specific date?
I can tell you that on the Government Affairs Committee call this morning, the county just made a statement that based on current trends, it looks like we could be in the red tier by mid-March, mid-month. So that's when the county might, again, based on current data, that's when we might hit the red tier. If that was, answers part of your question.
It's more a matter of with 88.6 and what the requirements would be for us to be able to qualify. Right now we're in purple. If we move ahead with TK through 2, would we still qualify versus, and then a week later we're red?
Yeah.
Have to have TK through 6.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on the same webinars as I went on the access stuff yesterday. And that was the question that was going over and over and over again. So if you're in purple, it's the prioritized groups in the TK through 2. But then as soon as you hit red, you're opening. Elementary plus 1 grade level in secondary. And so you better have your plan together, because if we are right, if we're on the turning to red as quickly as that Jordan and I heard, then we need to have that in our sights.
It's my understanding too that those are minimums for those tiers. So if you said something such as TK through 5th were open, plus our prioritized cohorts, and you selected per se 12th grade to come back and have some of their senior year, you could do more than that.
Right.
That is the minimum. So
Right.
you could say TK 12.
Right. But it's just that you have to be ready to open, you have to, because you don't get to wait 5 weeks after you turn red, you do it.
For 10 days or whatever. Okay.
And on the flip side too, what I heard is that if it will be out of our control in the funding aspect to close on our own. We could only close again if it was based off of what the county or state told us to do.
That's correct.
I remember seeing somewhere, and I don't know whether you have paperwork everywhere. If we do not open before that April 1st date, and if our county does end up moving back or into purple at that point, that there will be testing requirements of us.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Without funding, if I remember. I mean, no additional funding in terms of weekly testing.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask if the cabinet actually has a recommendation?
Would that be more appropriate when we got to the action item?
Yeah,
You
yes,
tell me.
yeah, let's, yeah, we have to wait to the action item. This
Okay,
is,
then I have a different question. Where do we stand, in your view, with our safety precautions? What is in place? And what might not be in place?
So we have met all the requirements of the COVID safety plan for the county. In my opinion, I have done the checklist. And I've submitted the safety plan. There was nothing that I could not check the box that we have not completed. When I first submitted the plan in January, we did not have any testing secured for students. Since that time, we have secured that testing, and that is why I resubmitted my plan on February 19th, which means right now, if it's not required, but we have to have testing available for staff and students. The current company that we've been working with on monthly testing for the community and staff is very willing and has agreed to come up every Wednesday, which in the hybrid model would be our distance learning cleaning day. And we have since then gotten internet at Grandview Elementary, and the testing would be available there for any staff or student that would want testing.
And my understanding is that we're not required to do testing every week, based on if we were to open for it.
That's correct. Also, the safety plan, if you look at it, is posted on our websites as required by the state of California. As I said, it should be tomorrow. If I don't hear anything, I think that should be approved. Because tomorrow will be day 8 business days since submitted at 5 p.m. on the 19th. So if we don't hear anything, that means that the plan would be approved according to the last statements I got from the county. The document is 178 pages or 73 pages because included in it is the COVID safety guidelines that Mr. Bill has put together. And that has all of the OSHA requirements that are required for like cleaning and testing cadence and reporting procedures, those kind of things. And on top of that, addendums to the back of the plan are every school site submitted COVID safety plans. And so their safety plans are included in that as well. We have been writing the plans over and over again, depending on the changing guidelines since last spring. And so we are very well prepared with the PPE, the things that we've mentioned about the air recyclers, fans in classrooms, all of those things are here. We're not waiting on supplies at this time. There's been training, and our custodians have been doing a great job of learning what to do and cleaning and they're doing it now. They've been doing it for the people that are coming on site. So I think that we are very well prepared with our safety plan. In fact, I've read some other district safety plan to see how ours kind of compared, and we are doing more for testing. Most of them say, please look at the county website and find testing on your own. So, and we've done a good job of securing testing for athletes and others if we need to. So we've been working as a cabinet, and thanks to Jenny and Christy in the business department, we've been working on that this week. So I'm ready to sign some contracts for that.
And Mr. Beal brought up ventilation issues, and I know we've done some things to prepare for ventilation issues as well. So you've been working on windows. What is that?
So ventilation issues in the time of the classrooms, we do have a list of classrooms that don't have some operating windows, but very few classrooms have no operating windows. The windows at MPH are no longer manufactured, and we can no longer get their parts. So we have tried to work very hard, Jim Zimmer has, to get those parts fabricated by a fabricator, and no one's willing to do the work. So the air recyclers that they have, we currently use those in like the district office conference room and such. They have enough power to recycle the air and clean the air for an entire classroom. So every classroom has one of those. Other employees that want one for their offices have one of those. There's desk shields for classrooms as well. Every classroom was provided with a fan. Every classroom does have a door. We've asked site principals if you have a classroom that is empty, that has working windows, to move teachers that in a classroom that don't have working windows to those classrooms in the next, before we reopen. So Mr. Zimmer has worked really hard for months on those windows. And we just don't have the ducting and the air conditioning to do the ventilation that way. Never had the air conditioning in it, and all of that would be exceed the amount. In fact, that was on part of the bond things that we were looking at, a failed bond initiative to provide all that. But when you do that kind of work, it triggers every ADA, DSA requirement imaginable. So, and we don't have the funds, even with these funds, it would exceed that into the millions and millions of dollars.
And Todd, I believe it was on your presentation, but what would you say is the number or even percentage of students that are disengaged?
It's a great question, and I wish I could answer. I'm not in the classroom, so I wouldn't be able to tell specifically. I can just like anecdotes that we're hearing from teachers and from parents and things like that. It really kind of mixed bag. I know I'm giving a very general, political type answer. I can't be specific, so I'm not quite sure, but it does sound like it's kind of a mixed bag.
And I think there's not a clear definition of what disengaged is. Does disengaged mean they never log on, or they're not, participating to the best of their ability, or they're not participating the way they were when they were in classroom? It's just such a vague word. And that's what I think Cindy chimed in with, like, that's really broad. I would say of my children in my house, one of the letters asked, do you have kids in the district? I do, 5. And I would say 4 of them are disengaged. So, I don't know, but they're still getting by. We're doing our best. So just it's a vague word.
And there's no clear definition, just like SB 228, there's no clear definition that's been provided at this time. Same thing as how do you identify those kids that that are suffering abuse and neglect. It's the same issue of trying to have a process for identifying those students without traversing in really bad waters.
Yeah, if I can just add on that too, when they give a list of prioritized students, you can have one kid that fits into multiple categories. Yes, the important part about it, you can have a student who's considered homeless, who may be disengaged, but at the same time is having an abusive relationship like home. And so that's the unfortunate part about that, we don't know. I can say we've had pretty good counseling groups that are trying to help them out. I know we have care salts as well. It's difficult, and I know we've heard that a lot today in the past. We don't quite know the full ramifications of some of our things are happening.
I know it's not. I know we would never be able to figure out an exact number of abused or neglected, but we do have, teachers on the front line. We do have our COSA, Team Market that's talked about it at our last board meeting. We have Kelvin data, have that checkpoint, we have care stalls, we have counselors. So we do have a lot of systems in place that help identify at least a percentage of students unsure, but I know it wouldn't capture all. So I guess it goes to say that all of these categories, or most of them, are a little vague in terms of their definitions. But I did have a question based off of something that Bill had mentioned. Can you remind me the cost that would be incurred on our district for following a testing guidance for every staff and student per the CDPH guidelines? I can't recall that number.
Well, the number I quoted previously was 250,000 a week. However, the testing that we secured now is less expensive. So I don't have a new number because we are just going over those quotes and those proposals today. We know it won't be that high, but that was with every student, every staff member required testing every week. So in the worst case scenario, the most expensive test would be $1 million a month. But right now,
$250,000 a week, right?
correct. But But right now, we're looking at better options for that, because vendors are rapidly coming up with better solutions that are more cost effective.
And I might just add too, well, one of the things with the testing, depending on the language, offer versus required. So, I mean, we'll really be able to identify, to offer a test versus required to test.
Just as a side note, I printed out some of the AB 86 proposed text, and their definition for disengaged is just not there. It's super common, yeah. So I was trying to load it up to try and see what it was pointing to, but are there any other questions? All right, moving on. Thank you. Actually, just a side note, thank you. Just for anybody who might be listening in, everybody has had to reinvent pretty much what they're doing every day in the office. Michelle has become a tracker of who has vaccines and who hasn't, and is working on trying to get people vaccines. Where our staff has to wear a bazillion hats already, this has become extraordinary. I appreciate the letters that people have sent in. I appreciate that RTA, CSEA have just really risen to the occasion, and the kindness and the collaboration and the caring in the community. And you know, so this report being put together is put together in a day. We put together this meeting in a day to have this. And I just wish that the community, I appreciate the kind words from the community, but also just so that you'd understand, this is just an extraordinary situation that we're all dealing with. And just wanted to state my appreciation. Moving on to the action calendar, 5.0 action calendar, 5.1 superintendent approval for the board of trustees to determine grade span reopening dates considering Assembly Bill AB 86. Fiscal impact, none.
Similar.
Secondly.
Cindy, motion, and Jordan second. Discussion.
Bill,
So
Oh,
I
yeah.
would like to know if the cabinet has a recommendation.
I knew you were gonna ask that. I feel that there are pros and cons to all dates. And some of those are tied to funding, and we make decisions based on funding, we make decisions on safety and priorities. April 12th has already been announced as a date. It would mean that we would be penalized by the 2% and we would be required to have the testing cadence. But it would also allow us to get our employees their second shots. I think it was very positive news that I received at 4:50 today to send out those codes in the morning to get the 127 employees their vaccination appointments. So that would be done in the morning. I do think that a tiered approach allows us to have time to develop confidence and trust in what we're doing instead of bringing everyone back on one date. So that TK to 2, bringing them back sooner, and then adding a 3, 4, or 5 if they're like the following week would allow us to build some practices and some safety and see how it's working, educate kids, educate families on the protocols and things like that. It would eliminate the some of the work that our site teachers and administrators have already done to get the cohorts back, because we would be bringing these kids back in a tiered approach. Looking at some of the dates that have been thrown out in letters and preparation in 10 days and all of those things, knowing that if we hit red, we could open everything. Looking at a sooner date. We talked about dates like March 22nd for TK2, March 29th for 3, 4, 5, and having a break, and then bringing secondary back if allowed, or an additional grade level such as seniors. I think we need to get our seniors back, but that's my opinion. April 12th. A tiered approach to bringing kids back so that we can learn instead of everybody at once. And that would not impact any funding that we would get, and we would not have to adhere to the required testing cadence if we were open before April 1st.
There you go. You got a really good answer. Oh,
Good
you got a really good answer, Bill Mellinger.
Just a question as far as the potential with all that bringing seniors back. Does it matter as much to secondary in that the seniors would have classes that were with juniors or sophomores, and would that create a unsurmountable logistics issue if you were to consider doing that?
We're in the process of looking at that, bringing in a hybrid model. We have the district for collaboration with CSE and RTA. Having that initial meeting to look at a hybrid schedule for secondary. We have a follow-up meeting coming up on the 9th. And so right now it's in a discussion planning stage. So we're not saying it's not impossible, but we don't want to say that for during state rapid that more information will be following.
Natalie,
No,
anything from you, Sister Mama?
Bill's raising his hand.
Oh, sorry, Bill.
When Bill's done, I will.
okay. Mr. Bears made a comment that I thought was rather interesting. By the way, you listen to everything. And I need to make this comment. Sometimes you have to stop listening and make decisions. But Mr. Bear made a comment that I thought was interesting. He was concerned about coming back in unequal way. My words, Mr. Bear, not yours, but not coming back altogether. That it would be unfair to come back in groups, I believe was what we were trying to communicate.
My concern is more having, let's say, kindergarten come back at one site and on the other site.
Okay.
He's talking about.
At a different, at just at one school, not necessarily.
So community-
I was hearing it a slightly different ways, listening.
I'm okay with the tiered approach that people.
All schools equal, all kindergarten, all schools coming back, equitable return.
In terms of across the community,
Yeah.
rather than one community
Right.
having certain grades.
Exactly.
But what I also heard Mr. Bear make a comment about was about 5-day versus hybrid and some concerns about hybrid.
I just follow up. We have right now the hybrid schedule that's currently planned for, which is 2 days on for a group, Wednesday off, and the other 2 more days for a different group of cohorts. Another option that could be out there is, kind of a 5-day model, in which students could go back to school in cohorts. So let's say I'll put 8 of them. 8 of them goes in the mornings, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then there's a break in the afternoon, and the second part of the cohorts, L through Z. N through Z, we're going to go in the afternoons. So that's the other option. So again, it hasn't been planned yet or looked at as a calendar wise with teachers, but it definitely get something out there as an idea for just possible discussion.
If we were to choose that, I would have to rewrite the safety plan and resubmit it to the state and the Department of Education, the San Bernardino Department of Health. Because right now, the plan that was submitted is the hybrid model, Monday, Tuesday, cleaning on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for the other group. If we change that plan, I have to resubmit the plan, and we have to wait a minimum another 8 days.
I'm just spitballing based off of, what we're talking about. Obviously, nothing's been firmed up in regards to that type of potential schedule. But I would estimate that if you were able to do a 5-day-a-week hybrid model, that it would lead to more instructional time on the school site. Is that a fair assumption?
It is, well, and looking at playing around with schedules, it would be less time on campus per day, but it would be time on campus every day per student. But it would be less time. So for example, the models we kicked around, the current model allows for 6 hours of in-class or on-campus instruction. The other model would allow for 10 a week. But again, that is not written and that is not approved, and we haven't collaborated on that.
Natalie, did you want to say something?
I had two questions. In regards to if the safety plan that you submitted for some reason did get kicked back to us, how long would it take to recreate a new one and submit it again? And are we waiting 8 days again?
It depends on what they told me we did wrong. I mean, if it's something that I didn't word properly or that we didn't do, then we could fix quickly. I don't know, because I have not had any feedback. You don't get any feedback when you submit it.
Right.
You
So
submit it, they
and
receive it.
just to clarify to everyone, we wouldn't be able to open any of these dates if the safety plan wasn't accepted.
That's correct.
So when we open, irregardless of the date, there will be a safety plan in place that's been approved by the county.
Correct.
Okay. The other question that I have, I think I also know the answer to, which in this tiered approach, that obviously means that teachers at different levels would be coming back sooner. And because of protected health information, we likely don't know if those are teachers that have had their vaccines or not. Correct?
That is correct. The governor has made it, the vaccinations are not a requirement for reopening.
Right. But we can't make it an internal requirement, or that would be a struggle in making it an internal requirement because of PHI.
Correct.
And to piggyback on what Natalie was asking you there, so if they did unfortunately give it back tomorrow and say, oh, it's not adequate, you have to do a new 8 days?
Yes, we'd have to rewrite what was wrong with it and then submit it again and wait another 8 days.
And to just talk about this potential tiered structure of TK2 on March 22nd, currently we've announced April 12th. March 22nd is 10 instructional days sooner, versus 22 calendar days that would allow staff who need to get vaccinated or want to get vaccinated rather to get their vaccination. So we're talking about 10 instructional days, actually less because Wednesdays would still be virtual, versus 22 calendar days in that same period to allow staff to get vaccinated.
Are you talking about the date difference from 3/22 to 4/12?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Is it, just throwing this out here, what your thoughts would be in terms of, fingers crossed, the safety plan, our safety plan is accepted, but potentially if we were to resubmit one, could be able to have 5-day instruction, say starting April 12th, but in the interim, have our TK2 and, have that tiered approach with that 2 days a week in order to be able to do introductions and campus familiarity and the like. So follow what the safety plan that has been submitted requests in, have to have that in March, but then in April, look at the 5-day-a-week instruction. What would your thoughts be on something like that?
They've given no guidance about addendums. So I could reach out to my contact and find out. I could do that. Obviously not this evening, and I don't know how fast they get back to me, but there's no guidance for superintendents about making addendums to your safety plan. It's submit, you have 8 days, approved if you hear nothing.
Does the cabinet believe, and the unions really believe, that we could open by March 22nd? Is everything in place so that we could if we chose to?
Yes, everything is in place.
And could you clarify just something for me, Madam President? Exactly what does this action item state we are going to be able to do?
We, as a board, are going to provide our guidance in terms of when each, by grade level, school sites are to open.
So I'm gonna have to amend the motion with
Specific?
specifics.
Okay.
So this conversation is supposed to get us to specifics So then I can amend my motion, you can second.
So what we're working towards is.
July the
Or
second.
anyone,
Yes.
anyone can.
Cindy, touch your mic.
Go ahead.
Sorry to touch your mic.
Oh, yeah.
So potentially, we come up with a plan that we open 19th through 42nd grade on the 22nd. And, you know, do it whatever tiered approach or not, giving dates and grade spans. And currently, and we have an MOU with the union right now that requires us to make sure that there are at least 10 working days for teachers to prepare for whatever, for getting back into in person.
So I was concerned because there was no specificity to this.
We-
And I was thinking, we're gonna have to do another meeting or something.
no. We're
So
deciding
that's why
tonight.
my information, you did that clear.
It was written that way so the board can make the decision.
And what I think might be a good idea, but I maybe, and I don't know if we're ready for it, is if we were to go around with what, you know, we need to get to some specifics. Right now, we're kind of saying and asking questions sooner rather than later. It might be nice for us to kind of feel out where everybody's at with it so we can get some new state of motion. So, does anybody?
Would you like to start that?
Jordan.
Sure, I'll start that, but I also would like to encourage cabinet to, and I would say the unions to guide us if we're going in a direction that is just not going to be wise or feasible or in any shape or form. But what my inclination would be is on the 22nd, TK through 2 in the hybrid as written in the safety plan as currently. The tiered approach, like Michelle had indicated earlier, starting on the 29th, 3rd through 5th for elementary. And then with starting on the 12th, looking at switching that to 5 days a week for elementary and opening up secondary. If we move to red, if we do move to red, then looking at starting on the 29th. Starting senior 12th grade at the high school. That's what my inclination would be.
I'm sorry, I didn't totally hear what you said. Did you say 12th grade or all of high school?
12th grade, and then all of secondary starting April 12th, but on the 29th, if we are in red.
Because if we're in red, we have to add the secondary. One secondary, at least.
Before the first.
I just didn't know what you said.
Sorry, Mark.
You have to add the secondary before the first, correct?
Yeah, only if we wish to make sure that we get the protection of AB 86 with us being in red.
Yeah, we have to be in red, Natalie.
And Jordan, I think I heard you correctly, but maybe I didn't hear that conversation in regards to the ability to open up just for seniors, like what that looks like, since there are a lot of seniors who do classes with juniors and whatnot also.
That's what Todd was saying, is that's the stuff they're working on right now. They're having that conversation on secondary schedule.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, that's if we go to red, our backup plan to get secondary started would be just the seniors in Jordana's opinion, correct?
And what I'm suggesting is that would be just the seniors on the 29th of March, but then come April 12th after spring break,
If we're in red,
everybody.
And if we're not in red, you would prefer for just all of secondary on April 12th.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Somebody else wanna chime in?
Jordan.
Are we allowed to?
Are you guys, can we invite Mark there into the conversation? Are you all right? Yes, please, Mark.
Look, have the microphone, please.
I know the secondary teachers have felt that hybrid approach, that they don't know how it would work. So. I know there's the secondary committee looking at it, and honestly, there were a couple teachers on the second, or many on there that were ready to start tomorrow. And they came away from the meeting going, I don't know how to do this. With all the restrictions, this and that, everything that we have to do. So, I think the 612 is looking more at a morning session, an afternoon session type thing. I'm not speaking for everybody, but I think I'm speaking for the majority of them. TK2 sounds good. 3rd, 5th on the 29th, you know, we have 2 days that week. Oh, okay, just let me know. Could that be modified? Okay.
But 2 days. Figure out this.
Professional.
Yeah.
Because
Professional
the
development.
18th, if that's the 18th and 19th are non-attendance days, correct?
And let me say also, as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned with secondary, I would rather not specify right now in what way, shape, or form it would look like. I'm just looking at start day, especially if the safety plan is modified.
Unfortunately, your schedule would have to be modified in some way. Likely hybrid because of the distance requirement. You can't meet it any other way but 50% capacity.
Hybrid or good morning, afternoon sessions, he suggests, right?
Yeah, the actual schedule can be worked out, but I'm saying you can't go above the 50% capacity on any given time on campus.
Correct, and obviously, aid and just, it's not gonna work for every situation,
Yes.
so.
Especially about time without.
The two,
Mrs. Dominguez, do we know anything about CAS testing anymore?
Mark, I want to make sure that we stay.
Oh, okay, because, you know, if they're gonna come back and start CAS testing,
Oh, yeah.
I have a problem with that.
There's going to be so many variables that we don't even know what AB 86 is going to be come Thursday.
Okay,
So, and love, well, I think we're gonna have to continue to hammer out the details.
all right, and I know some of it has to be done in part, so, all
Yes.
right,
So things that I've read today, you're saying that they will have to pay a test.
Yeah.
On a modified,
but the
modified class.
schedule is going to be lengthened, except that you go, it's gonna be one week into July. Who's gonna come back to do July testing? If market is so crazy right now and it's still going to be crazy, that's in regards to testing.
So it's premature for us to make any kind of decisions based on that.
Which aggravates the heck out of me.
yeah, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Now there's our hand up. No.
Yeah, I was, it was answered. Thank you.
I would feel, you know, if we're talking, you know, dates and specifics, I really would feel more comfortable with something like an April 29th for TK through 2.
April 20th.
I'm sorry, I'm misspoke. March 29th, not April, of course.
Interesting, Jordan.
March 29th, because I really feel it is strongly important that any staff member who feels they, you know, would like to get a vaccine gets that opportunity, starting, you know, again, we're talking about if we did TK2, then those teachers would be coming back 10 instructional days sooner, or rather 8 in-class hybrid days sooner, but it would also require them to come in 22 days sooner than when they could have potentially gotten the vaccine. And that doesn't make sense to me. I feel like vaccines are starting to become more available. We just got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine approved. It's easier to store. It's a single shot. It's proven to be effective. It was just announced today that by the end of May, there may be, you know, the plan is to have at least a vaccine or dosage available to every American who wants one. I would see it as prudent to wait or push back, you know, to at least a week so that we could say, and grandfather ourselves in to not have the burden or the funding requirement for the CDPH's testing cadence, but in addition, allow as minimal risk as possible for teachers.
I get that, I know that one shot of either the Moderna or Pfizer has incredible efficacy. So it, as much as the Johnson & Johnson single dose. So,
You're absolutely correct in that, but are we going to get 127 employees vaccinated by March 22nd? We have no idea. I feel that in this case, it would be better to err on just a little bit side of caution and push it back just a, we're still, at least in this proposal, I'm still proposing moving our reopening date up to March 29th as opposed to April 12th. But for TK2.
I'm going with Jordan on this one.
And for teachers that have, I want them to get vaccinated, and I know sometimes it's hard to get appointments. There have been a lot of teachers who have already, weeks ago, there's a couple that I know of that are getting their second vaccination this week. So I think about the students, those disengaged ones are the ones who are home alone all day while their parents work full time, and they are isolated beyond isolated. So I think that if we can, as a district, maybe consider what we can do to help support those teachers who aren't yet there with their vaccinations, I really think we need to put the students first.
I feel like, everybody talks about, just in a generalized sense, teachers don't get enough support, teachers need more resources, teachers are not paid enough. We hear these things and we hear the general public supporting teachers, but when they come to us through surveys, when they come to us through negotiations, when we see comments being submitted, asking and pleading for some support, why at this point does the community say the heck with the teachers, let's put the students first in this case? But still, they bring up good points for these students. Children can still transmit the virus, and I'm not saying that would happen in large numbers, and I'm not saying it would happen in our district or in our area in any way, but the possibility is still there. And I feel that the prudence of just a little bit of extra time to allow those teachers asking us for support and staff members in general to just get that opportunity to at least get their first dose would be most wise in this case.
They will get their code tomorrow.
But when will they get the vaccine? We don't know.
Well, I can speak personally. I got called by Mountains Hospital over the weekend and could have made an appointment today or Wednesday at Mountains to have gotten the vaccine. I went online a week ago and got the vaccine at down the mountain at a Rite Aid location. And so the opportunities are there right now. And if the county has opened up 170, the number that we need, 127, they can probably get one within the next week or so somewhere. So they can get it. The efficacy right now for one shot, that's all you get is 57%. Johnson is 66% with one shot. People are going to be protected right away. Right away.
And then I'd also add, the district they did mention to all teachers staff, I think about 2 weeks ago, that they would have 2 hours of release time, so they wouldn't have to use sick time. And communication was sent out. Please don't, if you wish to get vaccinated.
And we also extended that release time, like those 24 vaccinations that became available in Apple Valley. Now we took the first 24 employees that were willing to drive that far. And we'll do that again, depending on where they can get with the My Turn or website. So they will.
Madam President, you were actually polling us. Are you still polling us, or
Yes.
were you entertaining a motion for them?
We have Jordan's opinion, Bill, what is your, opinion? And we still,
Did you
and we
share?
still need Natalie, not necessarily, I'm with Jordana.
I'll let Natalie go next.
Oh,
That was me saying thanks. I am struggling just as much as everyone else with these decisions, and there are so many pros and cons and so many unknowns. that it is very, very challenging. I hear what you're saying, Jordan. And when you speak, I go, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then the opposing side, again, only a week difference makes a lot of sense too. Our kids have been out of school for a very long time. I think that, the sooner the better, as long as it's as safe as possible is what we do need to do. And that does give them, essentially 19 days to organize themselves if they haven't already, the TK through 2 teachers that do want to get vaccinated. I wish I had access to the numbers to know how many of those have not been yet. And unfortunately, we just don't get to know that. But we know that there are still a significant amount of employees who want to get it that haven't had access. And again, we'll be able to, and this gives them at least 19 days to do that.
We have 107 employees that have already had their first dose. And starting on their second, some of those. We have 127 getting a code tomorrow morning to make their appointment. And we have 142 that will have said no to the vaccination.
Yeah, we just don't know how many are the TK2 teachers or how many are the 3-5 teachers. We have no idea who those are, or staff, not even teachers. I mean, it's going to be the entire staff of those elementary schools that are going to be exposed to each other and exposed to the students.
So what are you suggesting, Nellie? What is your opinion?
Yeah, I can agree with the 322 for TK2, 329 for 3-5, and 412 for all of secondary. And again, as we highlighted, the details of what secondary looking like is not for us to determine at this point.
I didn't quite finish my thought. My other consideration for, saying TK2 instead of March 22nd, March 29th is I would like to be able to work towards an opportunity. I really like the idea and the sound of a 5-day hybrid model that would provide more time in the classroom per week per student. I would really like that opportunity to be explored and potentially be implemented. And if that requires a little bit more negotiation time, I think it would be worthwhile to, again, be prudent, not just for vaccination's sake, but also for the sake of being able to work out a potentially better hybrids plan that would provide more in-classroom minute and less disruption to folks' lives. If we just say, yeah, March 22nd, and then we'll figure out a new hybrid model later, then we're changing students, we're changing staff, and we're changing families' routines from distance learning to a 2-day-a-week hybrid model to a then 5-day-a-week hybrid model. Wouldn't it be just better to give it at least one more week time to figure it out and potentially just go in one fell swoop with, here's the better model, we've worked it out with, the unions, we've submitted a brand new safety plan, we'll wait the 8 days for that, and then we'll just do it in one clean sweep instead of just changing. We already know that we might want to pursue something like this. Why start with something that we feel is inferior instead of just going straight for what we know might be a better model?
Devil's advocate on that in regards to the adjustability of us. I'm looking at this very mindful of the fact that I have children in all 3 of these things. They're all going to have different start dates. They're all going to have, we're in a system where we've had to adjust and readjust time and time again. And the model in which we learn is going to continue to be adjusted, I think, for a significant period of time. Just throwing that out there. It's not none of this is traditional, and it's going to continue to change. That's the reality of it.
And I would be fine with keeping it open in terms of how district wishes to, I mean, just to, if it makes more sense to stay with the 2-day hybrid versus going 5-day, I would like to keep that open, but having that possibility, rather than us waiting until the 12th to open and doing 5-day instruction for elementary, allowing the opportunity to think about doing an additional safety plan and looking at
Amendment. Let's call it an amendment.
yeah. So, but doing the 5-day starting April 12th potentially, but I'm more concerned about would be that 22nd tiered approach than the 29th. And Bill, you haven't had a chance to.
It's your turn now, Bill. Stepping up.
But how we do this is up to you guys. So it's not even a decision that we have to make. Frankly, I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion.
What is your opinion on the dates? Oh, you're just gonna go ahead and.
You're going for it.
You're gonna, okay, then. All right, well then I'm gonna amend my motion. So I'm going to amend my motion to suggest the following dates for reopening. March 22nd, the first tier of TK through 2. March 29th, the second tier of grades 3 through 5. Plus, if we are in red, plus secondary. April 12th, if we are in red, all students. And as Bill mentioned, the how is left up to.
All secondary, if we're red, March 29th? That's what you said.
No, plus 1 grade, at least 1 grade of secondary, March 29th, if we're in red, per the details of ABSB 86.
Did you say secondary by the 12th?
If we're in red,
No, I'm now saying all secondary by the 12th.
if we're in red. You have to be in red,
That's true.
yes.
Well, once you're in red, you can do 1 level,
And then.
or you can do all.
If we're in
And
purple,
what I heard the president suggesting earlier was that by the 12th, we would have all high school.
presuming we're in red, if we're in purple, the county and the state will not allow us to.
Well, I said all students, so that's, let me clarify that. All students TK through 12 will be in school April 12th,
If we're in red.
That's.
if we're in red.
And if
We're-
we're not in red with the secondary day.
I'm going to second that, the motion, if that included the high school starting by April 12th.
Yes, TK through 12.
And now I'd like to comment further that unfortunately, there is no way for us to guarantee safety of everybody to keep from getting the virus. I appreciate the fact that we have had a governor who has been overly cautious. And he knows and has had lots more scientific reporting than we have. And he is saying we should be getting the schools open and is trying to offer a plan for that. I also appreciate the fact that we've had, Suzanne, you're still here? I actually heard your last name for the first time. You've always been Suzanne to me. So Suzanne and Mark, both of you, people out there, I met bus drivers doing painting in the hallways at the high school. I know we have teachers that are just working very hard. I know that any way we come back is going to be a challenge, but I know that what we're doing right now is a challenge for our teachers and is really making it difficult for them. I know that there's no way that we can say people won't get the virus. In fact, even the vaccine can't guarantee that. You can have the vaccine, you can have both doses, you can still get the virus, you can still pass it on to somebody else. That might sound threatening or frightening, but the fact is that there have been no reports of anybody who had the vaccine, even 1 dosage, who has died with the virus. So there is significant protection. The fears that we've had have been built up now for a year, folks, a year. School's been out. Okay, we need to help our students, we need to help our teachers, and it's time to get them back into school. And I trust in administration, and I trust our teachers and to take the steps necessary to get back well. Now, I'm also believing that means that there are teachers who could say, I wish to stay home. Is there still going to be the the long distance learning possibility for students and teachers who don't want to come in.
For students, yes. Clear some. For students, yes. For teachers, also yes, but they have to go through an accommodation meeting in our active process. Typically with that means we have to get a physician's note from their doctor stating that they have restrictions. Then we have to conduct a meeting to determine whether the district can accommodate those restrictions. Typically we can. We're pretty good at finding ways to make it happen. So the answer is yes, and then there's the process there.
I will say, it sounds like that the board has its opinion, and I won't stand in the board's way. I do ardently support reopening schools in an expeditious but safe manner. I just want to say again that March 22nd, as opposed to March 29th, it just feels a little bit more rushed when, again, we could be doing things expeditiously and safely. I don't see a reason that we have to do March 22nd, for example. I mean, again, students will have the opportunity and families will have the opportunity to keep their children in distance learning in any model. That's protected under 86 as well. But we are asking our staff, or rather telling them that they'll have to, and accommodations meeting doesn't guarantee that they'll be able to work remotely.
And Jordan, I really appreciate your view on that and your concern for the staff. And I think that's why I asked questions earlier, are we ready? And do we have all the safety things in place? And I believe we do.
Except for the vaccines, we don't know when that will happen for us.
That vaccine they're going to get right away and the protections are going to be there. And I don't think even a week, I would think that we would have to wait longer than the 29th, because then people would be saying, well, we need to have a second vaccine in order to do that. And then we've got to redo some of our plans and stuff. And I think we're going to get into a much more challenging place at that moment. But I really do appreciate it. I would say this is not saying to heck with the teachers. And I'm concerned that unfortunately that we use that kind of language, because this is saying, teachers, we care about you very much. We've been out of school for a year. This is saying, staff, we care about you very much. This is saying, parents, we care about you very much. Saying, administration, we care about you very much. And it's time that we have to take that step. We're the ones who have to take the step. Let's move forward.
That is, it doesn't sound like, has everybody been able to bring up all the things they wish to bring up? Okay, then let's go ahead. I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor as the motion of the motion is stated by Cindy a few moments ago. Should I go ahead and read it? Tier 1, March 22nd, which is for TK through 2. Tier 2, opening up March 29th, which would include 3 through 5. Plus, if we are in the red, plus 12 grade to be specified by personnel. In secondary, and then on April 12th, TK through 12, all grades. Again, presume we're in the red at that time or better. We've already had a motion in a second, so calling for a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The motion passed unanimously.
Now that's the amendment, so now we have to go back to the original motion.
No.
Okay, so
It was an amendment.
Okay. I lost my sheet.
Yeah, it wasn't a substitute motion.
Okay. So, moving on, let me get my glasses. 6.0, future meeting dates, regular board meeting, March 11th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. will be on YouTube. Regular board meeting, March 25th, 2021 at 4 p.m. on YouTube. And all future meetings will be held via YouTube for the public until executive orders change regarding gatherings.
I just have one question that, Todd, maybe this is your question. I was under this understanding that the letters are in lieu of, are like the green sheets for public comments, right? So the names have to be on green sheets. So the letter, some of the letters that we had were anonymous or no names. So is that okay to do?
I believe so.
Brown Act doesn't require
It
names to be put, if you put it there, then it's essentially optional.
So the question I asked earlier was, we would still be able to see somebody speaking, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we would know their names. Okay, so.
All right, then we could go to that.
7.0, adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting at 8:16 p.m.
Second.
Okay, so Cindy first, Natalie second, all in favor?